Steam. You already know what it is, but why do you choose to use it? Does it come pre-installed like the others? And it's not like it's the only option. You use it because it's the best. And being the best makes it the most dominant marketplace to buy games by far, leading people to ask, is Steam a monopoly? But what even is a monopoly? The basic definition is when a single company is the exclusive supplier of a particular product or service, normally without facing any competition. An example of that is something like Microsoft. Microsoft bought Activision, another competitor, in October of 2023 for $69 billion. I'm not saying every time a company buys another means it's a monopoly, but most of the time that happens, it's not really to benefit the company that was bought. Just look at Respawn with EA. Steam, on the other hand, doesn't really buy other companies, but gets extremely talented game developers responsible for some of the biggest games on their platform. Now, who is calling Steam a monopoly, and what even started it? As for when, there are two big events that happened. The older and less impactful was a poll asking industry executives if Steam is a monopoly, with the majority of them saying yes. Looking at the poll, they had 306 responses from executives, with 72% of them saying that Steam is a monopoly. But I find it funny that they also said that Steam is responsible for 75% of the revenue, with also using other platforms. But the biggest and newest news is Steam getting faced with a lawsuit for £656 million, or just under $900 million for my fellow freedom unit enjoyers. The lawsuit is brought on by Vicky Shotbolt, who says she is arguing on the behalf of 14 million Steam users who are eligible for compensation if they win. The lawsuit claims that Steam, or Valve, is abusing its dominance by using restrictive terms on game publishers and by locking users into using Steam. Specifically, it alleges Valve forces game publishers to sign up to conditions which prevent them from selling titles earlier or for less on rival platforms. It also claims that Valve requires users to buy all additional content through Steam, things like DLC or in-game currency, essentially locking in users to only making purchases on their platform. Shotbolt argues that this has made it so Steam can charge an excessive commission of up to 30%, making UK consumers pay too much for purchasing PC games and add-ons. And in my opinion, this is where they kind of expose themselves at the end here with the excessive commission of up to 30%. If you don't know, Steam takes a 30% cut of all sales on their platform. It is a 70-30 split for the developer. And this lawsuit is trying to say that if publishers didn't have to pay Steam as much, then they would be able to charge less. While technically that means they could, but we all know that's not true. If companies can get away with charging more, then they would. For example, Nintendo, who is charging $80 for their first-party games now. And I want to look at other marketplace revenue splits. Epic Games Store is 88/12, Xbox Store is 70/30, Microsoft Store is 88/12 to match Epic Games, Sony is also 70/30, Nintendo is 70/30 as well. The 70/30 split has been the industry standard for years. So why isn't Xbox, Sony, and Nintendo also being sued? Well, to answer that question, I think we need to go over why Steam is so far ahead of its competitors. I'm going to use the Epic Games Store as its counter because out of the others, it's probably the most competitive. Starting off the developer side, since I know a lot less about it, Steam makes it easier for lesser known games to be popular. Now, is it easy? No. You still have to go out and promote your game on your own. And from what I've seen, it has gotten worse, but it's almost impossible to naturally be seen on something like the Epic Games Store. It has the biggest user base by far, with around 30 to 42 million active players daily. And from what I've heard, the tools are great and it makes it a lot easier, with the only major negative being that 30% cut. But the consumer side is where Steam really destroys its competition. One of the best things about switching to PC is Steam's library and Steam's sales. Steam is pretty much every game you can think of, from PlayStation exclusives to indie titles. You can pretty much find anything you want, maybe sometimes too much. And this doesn't really have to do what I was talking about, but I was looking at Lethal Company and things like Repo and Peak were on the Epic Games Store yet, which they are still not. But what they do have is a company worker skin in Fortnite, which if that doesn't tell you all you need to know, then I don't know what will. But back to the important stuff, you have major sales every single season. Spring, summer, fall, and winter, new-ish major releases will go down to 20 to 40%, and old games will go for like $5, which is insane. And let me give you a real example. Detroit Become Human, a very popular game that is now 6 years old, was 95% off for the last winter sale. Because of this sale, Detroit Become Human sold 1 million copies in just 2 weeks, 6 years after it was released. This sale gave that game a new life, and the developer still made a lot of money years after it was released. Even when it comes down to the usability of each platform, Steam is just better. And I'll be honest, Steam UI isn't some masterpiece, but Epic Games Launcher might be one of the most poorly made things I've seen from a company that's that big. The problem is Steam is just too good. I don't want to sound like a shill, but it is just better. With so many companies treating its customers and users like garbage now, Steam is always a breath of fresh air. Still, the biggest issue people have is probably that developer split. Maybe Steam could change percentages if the upcoming Steam hardware succeeds, since they could subsidize costs like other companies do. But here's the thing, being the best doesn't make you a monopoly. Being the most popular isn't unethical. If Valve somehow loses this case, I can guarantee you we will see no benefit as the consumers or even developers. If anything, it's just going to make things worse. So no, Steam is not a monopoly, but it is the best marketplace for games by far, and I doubt anything will ever come close. And that's not because they're forcing out the competition, it's because the competition refuses to compete where it actually matters, making a platform that people actually want to use.